Well, welcome to today's lesson on English. We are taking the third of the series of lessons on tenses today. Now, that means I will be having more practical questions and then, of course, explanations of the answers and some other issues concerning tenses. Again, you stand to benefit yourself very well. So pay attention and learn more. Remember that these questions are drawn from past questions, and the explanation will go a long way to help you and guide you as to how you can use your tenses, as well how to answer questions on tenses. Question number 1. Ali goes to the stadium regularly. Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he dashed to the church for months. Our options are: A, hasn't been. That is, Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he hasn't been to the church for months. Then B, haven't been. Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he haven't been to the church for months. Then C, didn't go. Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he didn't go to the church for months. And then D, hadn't been. Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he hadn't been to the church for months. What is our answer? Now, first thing we want to do is look at the tense in one of the main clauses. This is a compound sentence. So we have one of the clauses. The verb here is goes. Alright? Which is the simple present tense. The simple present tense tends to show an action that takes place regularly, often, always, and all that. So it goes. That can set the tone. Of course, not that can, usually set the tone for the other clause. Although, because of the use of but, you can also have another tense, maybe past tense, depending on what we have in the other clause. But this may also be a guiding maybe a guide to the other aspects. Now, we're looking at, now let's come to the other clause, but he dashed to the church for months. Now, we can't take it as past, because obviously as at the time the speech was made, it means that as at that time the person hasn't been to the church, and the action is still on, is still present. So, we can't say that but he hadn't been to the church for months. If that is the case, if we use that, it means the person that is in the past. At that time, the person was going to the church, and we can't. That is not the sense we have here. That Ali goes to the stadium regularly. If I'm saying it now, that Ali goes to the stadium regularly, as at this moment, he's still not going to the church on the other side. Okay, so that means that D can't work, hadn't been. Then didn't go. It's also past tense, and of course, even the way it is expressed won't work in this case. But he didn't go to the church for months. It's also, of course, past form, so that won't work either. And that leaves us with A and B, which are present form that should fill the space. Now, B will not work based on the principle of concord, because he doesn't agree with haven't. Can't say he have. So that removes B. Our answer therefore becomes A. Ali goes to the stadium regularly, but he hasn't been to the church for months. Still hasn't been to the church for months. So it is the present form that fills here, and of course has should agree with he instead of have. So you can see the reason why we have taken A as our answer. Question number 2. The city dash as a federal capital only dash the last 20 years. The city dash as a federal capital only dash the last 20 years. Now, what are our options? Our options are: A, has existed, stroke 4. Actually, this should be ellipsis, but we can still leave it as stroke. Now, that means the city has existed as a federal capital only for the last 20 years. only for the last 20 years. Okay, so we have B. The city B is existed over. Now that means it should read this way: the city existed as a federal capital only over the last 20 years. Then we'll have B. We have B. C was existing stroke from. That is, the city was existing as a federal capital only from the last 20 years. Then we'll have D is existing stroke in. That is, the city is existing as a federal capital only in the last 20 years. Now, what should be our answer? Apart from awkward sounding, awkward meaning that could come from all the wrong options, what would they use here now should be our tense, because this question combines with the use of preposition. And so we look at it again. The city dash, it is the first space that actually works on tenses, or the principle of tenses. The second space is for the use of preposition, a topic we'll take also later. So let's look at the issue of tenses and use it as our guide now. The city dash as a federal capital. Now, should we say the city existed as a federal capital? Now, if we take that, existed as a federal capital only over the last 20 years. Now, if you say over the last 20 years, it means the existence is still on. If we take option D, if the existence is still on, then we cannot say existed, because that is simple past. It means the action is completed. So we can eliminate B. Now we'll take C, was existing. The city was existing as a federal capital only from the past 20 years. Now remember that was existing is past continuous tense, and that is a tense that is used to show an action that was taking place in the past and was interrupted by another one. Now if you look at the structure, there is no interrupting action. So based on that, we can eliminate C. But because the use of from here is okay, from the last 20 years, you have been existing from the last 20 years. So I think that is semantically okay in terms of the use of preposition. But of course, based on the tense, we will not accept C as the answer. Now we'll look at D. The city is existing as a federal capital only. Its existing will not work because its existing is the present continuous tense, and that is a tense used to indicate an action that is happening at the moment of speaking. And what we have here is a stretch of occurrence of existence of the city. And so to say at the moment of speaking doesn't really capture the tense we're talking about. So its existing as simple as a present continuous tense will not work in this aspect. Now we come to the one left, which is option A. Option A is the city has existed as a federal capital only for the last 20 years. For the last 20 years means that at the moment of speaking, counting it backward 20 years before, from there on, the city has been in existence. And remember the tense that is used. This tense here has existed means the present perfect tense. Remember that tense is a tense that is used to show an action that started in the past, but its effect is still in the present, which captures the sense that we have here, the meaning that we have here. The city started existing as a federal capital in the past, but is still a federal capital as at the moment of the speech. So you can see the connection from the past to the present. So our answer here for question number 2 is A, has existed as a federal capital only for the last 20 years. Question 3. Is it true that Okoro died before the gates were closed? Is it true that Okoro died before the gates were closed? Now, options: A, would return. That is it true that Okoro would return before the gates were closed? Now, B, returned. Is it true that Okoro returned before the gates were closed? And then C, had returned. That is it true that Okoro had returned before the gates were closed? And then D, would have returned. Is it true that Okoro would have returned before the gates were closed? Now, what should be our answer? Now, first of all, we can remove A. Is it true that Okoro would return? If we take that as an answer, then the other part will be before the gates would have been closed will be appropriate. So since the other part is not captured that way, then we can't even begin to think about A as an answer. We can therefore eliminate A. That also goes for D, would have returned. Now, is it true that Okoro would have returned before the gate had been closed? That will be what will be appropriate. So those options, option A and option D, can be eliminated. Then we'll take B and C. Now, the simple thing we need to do is that remember the issue of before. Once we have before, we don't use the simple past tense as in B. Once you see before, it's just that here the construction is a little bit different from, because once you have before, we have before the gates closed. But remember, okay, so it's still simple past tense, but this time we're using were closed to show the passive form. Before the gates closed, that is, the gates closed themselves. That is not the case now. Or before they close the gates, that would be the active voice. But here, the speaker intends to use the passive form voice. So what you have here too is a simple past, where before the gates were closed by somebody, but it's passive voice construction. So since this place is passive before the gates were closed, I mean it's simple past. Obviously, the other side of the clause will become the past perfect tense as usual. So our answer is C. Now we look at question number 4. It reads, we won't leave until it dash rain. We won't leave until it dash rain. Now, what are the options? A, will stop. That is, we won't leave until it will stop raining. B, stopped. That is, we won't leave until it stopped raining. C, has stopped. That is, we won't leave until it has stopped raining. Then D, stops. We won't leave until it stops raining. Now, what is our answer? You have to look at, you have a complex sentence here with the main clause, we won't leave, and then the subordinate clause until it dash raining. Now, if you look at our main clause, the verb there is won't, meaning will and not. That plus leave, of course, that is simple future tense. Now, since you have a simple future tense, it is ideal that the other part of the sentence, which is the subordinate clause, should also carry a present tense. Now, so that, should carry a present form, or a simple, not a simple form, but it should carry present tense. Let's leave it at that first. So we can therefore eliminate stopped, which is past tense. Now we will now be left with A, C, and D. A is simple future tense, C is present perfect tense, D is simple present tense. Now, so which of them should be our answer? Let's come to A. We won't leave until it will stop raining. That is awkward. It's as if the rain would deliberately stop for them to leave. And to that extent, usually the construction like this, you don't use, after having a simple future tense here, then you use the simple future tense in the other clause because of semantic implication. Alright, so we can eliminate A. we can remove A. Now we've already eliminated B. Now we are left with C and D. We won't leave until it has stopped raining. Remember that we use this is the present perfect tense. What is this function? It is used to show the connection between the past and the present. Now that is not what the meaning that is created here. There's no need to show a connection between past and present. So we are left therefore with D, stops. We won't leave until it stops raining. So that is the answer. The next possible answer is A, will stop. But remember, I said that is awkward. Usually the sense is not produced like that. We don't create a sense like that. So that makes your answer to be stops, because by the time it stops, it will be in the simple present tense. Our answer is therefore D, stops. Question number 5 reads: by the end of the football match today, will dash the best player. By the end of the football match today, we dash the best player. Options: A, could have known. By the end of the football match today, we could have known the best player. B, by the end of the football match today, we might have known the best player. C, will have known. That is, by the end of the football match today, we will have known the best player. And then D, would have known. By the end of the football match today, we would have known the best player. Now, what is the answer? Now, there's something you need to notice, that in option A, you have the past form of the modal auxiliary can, which is could. Option B, we have the past form of the modal auxiliary might. The modal auxiliary may, which is might here now. And then option D, we have the past form of the modal auxiliary will, which is now would here. Based on that, you should be able to know that they won't work. If the answer should be in the past modal auxiliary, then any of them would go. However, remember what I said earlier, that when we use by the end, and then anything followed by the end of today, by the end of the March today, by the end of this year, by the end of this month, whenever we use that, what we usually use is the future perfect continuous tense with the modal auxiliary in the present form. So our answer therefore is C, which reads: by the end of the football match today, we will have known the best player.